And welcome back to the newest episode of the Ryan and Log Fantasy Show. As always, I am Ryan.
And I am Logan.
And today on December 5th, 2020, we are going to bring you the second edition of Yays and Nays. And then we will quickly go through our Week 13 recap. This being probably one of the most important weeks of your fantasy season because it's either the last chance you got to make the playoffs or maybe get that bye that you won the playoffs. So today, we hope to cover some things that might be able to help you out for Sundays and Mondays games. So we are going to start off quickly with some yays and nays. We'll go position by position. And we will start off with Logan. Logan, who do you like this week at quarterback? Who is your yay quarterback?
I mean, this is a guy I brought up last show as well, but it's Kirk Cousins against Jacksonville. That passing attack has been looking good the last few weeks. They're starting to actually throw for some touchdowns, which is going to be big for Kirk Cousins. And Jacksonville is, I mean, they're terrible. So I'm excited to see what he can do in that matchup.
Yeah, I have Kirk Cousins on my list as well. I really like him this week against Jacksonville. The only thing that worries me is that if Dalvin Cook just gets running all game and they get ahead really big, that they're not really going to throw the ball a lot. But he's definitely one of the guys that I would really love this week just because Jacksonville's terrible. They don't really have much of a defense. So it's going to be a pretty good one for him. One of my QB yays of the week is, we've mentioned this guy a lot. He's one of our boys, but Taysom Hill. Yep. Taysom Hill is going to be going up against the Atlanta Falcons this week. I really like the fact that, well, like we've mentioned a ton of times, rushing as a quarterback is a cheat code.
Yep.
And he's going to be doing that a ton against the Falcons secondary that can't stop a nosebleed. So expect the Saints to be on the field a ton because that offense is, I don't think he's going to have a lot of throwing attempts in this game. He's not going to throw it a whole lot, but most of his points I think are going to come off the run.
Yeah, I think especially those rushing touchdowns are going to be big for him.
Do you have anybody else as a yay quarterback?
I mean, another guy you could look at is Derek Carr. Again, great matchup against the Jets. It was bad last week, so he's going to be on your waiver wire unless you're in like a 2 QB league or something. I can't imagine anyone holding him, but he's a guy, if you're in a desperation play, it's a pretty nice spot, especially with Josh Jacobs out, so they might not be able to lean on the run as much as they did before.
And I'm telling you, this is the last time I give Derek Carr any love, because if he lets us down again against the Jets, he must be exiled from fantasy football forever.
Exactly.
You never touch his name again. This is his last opportunity. And another guy I got just this week, Justin Herbert. He's my boy. He's on my fantasy team. I'm absolutely love that I get to start him. He gets New England this week, so it's going to be a little bit of a tough test, but they're playing in the dome, so they don't have to worry really about weather, and their passing attack is amazing. Especially now that they have Austin Eckler back, they're going to have an elite running back that they can dump it off to and actually make some explosive plays instead of having to lean on Bellagio in the backfield. So I really like Justin Herbert in this week. Now we're going to move on to nays. The guys that we don't like. The guys that are kind of imposters this week as a yay quarterback. Is there anybody, Logan, that maybe you would really like to start, but this week is just no way?
I mean, for me, I think Baker Mayfield. He's got a good matchup in Tennessee, so maybe he looks like he could be a good streamer, but he just, I don't know. He doesn't have it this year. He doesn't have Odell anymore. I'd be avoiding him. They're gonna push the rushing attack hard, so I don't see him having a good fantasy week.
Yeah, for the most part, Baker Mayfield, you never really like to start him anyways, but especially this week, it's nothing that you really are excited to do. And I honestly think the Titans are going to be getting ahead in this game. I think they're going to probably kill the Browns, in my opinion, because Derrick Henry, I think, is going to run all over them. And if with that being the case, it means he's going to have to throw a lot. And again, he hasn't proved really at all this year that he's been able to do that effectively for the most part of this season. So that's definitely a guy that you should probably stay away from this week. A guy for me at the top of my list, he's a big name guy, but I feel like I have to put him out there. Deshawn Watson. I think he's a nay for me this week, just because Deshaun Watson has been killer all year. Not saying anything about him as a player or anything, but losing. Oh man,
Will Fuller?
Yeah, sorry, I pulled a blank. Losing the flying V, Will Fuller. That's huge for him. He's going to have to rely heavily now on Brandon Cooks, Jordan Akins, and David Johnson. And to be honest, I don't like that Brandon Cooks is your number one wideout. It makes things pretty tough, especially that he goes up against Indianapolis, who has an unreal defense, a divisional matchup. I think it's going to be tough for him to do anything. I think he's going to have a way less game than he's had all year.
Yeah, and this might be a little bit like narrative-y, but the Colts got beat up. Like that defense got destroyed last week. I think DeForest Buckner's supposed to be back. I think they're going to come out flying and be looking to prove a point that they are an elite defense.
Oh, they're going to come out pissed.
Yeah, I think it could be a game that goes pretty poorly for the Texans.
Yep. Is there anybody else you got as a nay?
That'd be my main one for this week. I mean, Matt Ryan against the Saints, that's a tough matchup.
Matt Ryan is a nay all the time.
Be looking to pivot from him if you can, but...
Yep, you should look to pivot from him forever. But... you know what? There's another big name guy I'm going to bring out. I don't know if this is right, but there's a certain fan that listens out to here is a friend of ours. I feel like he deserves this. He wants us to talk about this guy, and I'm going to talk about him. He's my nay quarterback of the week, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is going up against a very big game for the Cardinals this week against the LA Rams. And the fact that Aaron Donald and that defensive line is going to be coming after him all the time with... apparently he's off the injury report. The shoulder's not bugging him anymore, but I don't know how legit that is. And anytime a quarterback has to face Aaron Donald, that is just a home wrecker. I don't know if I feel confident. And to be honest, they got beat by the New England Patriots last week. So I don't really know how good their passing game is anymore. I'm not like with D-Hop, it's always elite, but Aaron Donald, I think, is just really the game changer here. And I think that Kyler Murray might get under pressure a lot and might not have a great game. In my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I would still be starting Kyler Murray.
I'm still saying you start him. I'm saying that more his production that we've been used to for the majority of the season, I don't think you're going to see that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying nay as in he's going to put up 8 points again. I'm saying nay as he's probably going to put up 10 to 15 in my opinion, because I don't think he's going to have that game where he gets like 3 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown or something like that. Yeah, I think the Rams are really going to come out playing.
He's been unbelievable this year, but it's been with a pretty good schedule. I'm interested to see how he reacts down the stretch with actually a pretty tough schedule from here on out. I think it'll be really telling what he is as a quarterback and kind of how we should be viewing him moving forward for fantasy, because as of right now, I think it would be like looking at next year's draft, it'd be Pat Mahomes, Kyler Murray pretty safely.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you could really argue those two as not being the top tier.
You could maybe put Lamar in that conversation, but I definitely agree. I think number 1, number 2 is probably Pat and Kyler.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to the running back position now. Is there anybody, Logue, that you are super excited about as a yay running back of the week?
I mean, this is a guy, he could still be on your waiver wire, but Devontae Booker.
Yep.
Josh Jacobs has been ruled out. Devontae Booker has looked great this year. They've got a great rushing attack there in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
I think he could smash. He plays the Jets. The Jets, I mean, if they get ahead, they could be in a very positive game script and just run the ball on him. Now, he's also a good pass catcher. That's kind of how they've been using him this year. So he could very well be the full workload running back this week, and that's what we've been hoping for from Josh Jacobs all season.
Yeah.
He's been great when they're winning, but when they're losing, he isn't out there as a pass catcher. If Booker gets both roles, he could be a top 10 play this week.
I totally agree with that, because there's the matchup I have. One of the guys I'm trying to chase this week for the number 2 seed, he picked up Devontae Booker. And I'm not excited about that because I totally agree, especially against the Jets. That's an amazing game script. Even is it Rashard or Richard? One of their, I think it's
Jalen Rashard.
Rashard is their 3rd string running back. He is still banged up. It looks like he might play, but if he's banged up, they're going to go with Booker all game, I think. I don't think there'd be a reason to pivot from him. And like you said, if they get up big, they're just going to run on the Jets, who don't really have a great run defense to begin with. So he could legitimately have a huge game. Maybe be like a top 10 running back of the week, maybe. So I totally agree with that one. No problem with me with that. But I think for me, he's obviously one of the most obvious guys at the running back position is a yay. It's Derrick Henry. Even though you will start him regardless, Derrick Henry is going to explode. I think he's going to have a massive game, and he's been pretty famous for having great end of season games. But you know what? I feel like it's kind of a cop-out to just say Derrick Henry. So I'm going to move to a guy that might be a little bit low-key. This is Latavius Murray. Latavius Murray is a yay running back for me because ever since Taysom Hill has taken over under center in New Orleans, Latavius Murray has had amazing production at the running back position, mainly because they just use him to run up the gut. They use him on a very few passing plays, but the thing is, Taysom Hill does not pass the ball that much, so Latavius Murray is their go-to running back because Alvin Kamara just can't really run up the tackles as good as Latavius Murray can. So I think Latavius Murray, as long as Taysom Hill is there, is definitely a running back you should want to own in that system.
Yeah, they seem to kind of be moving towards Latavius Murray as their lead back. I think he's been in for the first snap a couple weeks in a row. So, I mean, if you're getting the lead back in New Orleans, that's a great spot to be.
Mm-hmm. You have anybody else you like this week at the running back position?
I mean, this is more a bet than anything. Jonathan Taylor. They're playing Houston. Houston's been terrible. Last week, he missed being on the COVID list, which was not for a positive test, just for close contact. And Wilkins and Hines both honestly sucked.
Yeah.
They got killed in that game. The game before that, Jonathan Taylor kind of broke out, so I think they saw that they need to lean on him if they're going to be a good team this year. He's clearly their best runner, and I think this could be the week you see that kind of all fall in place.
Absolutely. And that Indianapolis backfield is revolving door, so if you have anybody to own, it is Jonathan Taylor. Definitely agree with that. And finally, one last yay for me. This is all depending on if he gets activated today, because this is currently, it's around 2, almost 3 o'clock on Saturday, November 5th. And it's Myles Gaskin. If Myles Gaskin gets activated, he is an automatic start because there's nobody left in that Miami backfield. Because Ahmed is apparently out with an injury. Looks like Matt Breida's banged up. They don't have Jordan Howard anymore. So Myles Gaskin could legitimately come back and do a workhorse role, and they're going to be playing Cincinnati, so they're going to have an amazing game script for him. So if he plays, he is a lock-in running back for me.
Yeah, I think I was looking at that too. I wasn't sure on the health situation, but if he's healthy, again, he's the only guy there, and they love using their running back. There's also rumors Tua could be healthy, which I think could lead to them leaning on the running back even more, because they didn't seem to trust him to put it in his hands, fire downfield like they would with Fitz.
Yep.
So I think, again, if he's out there, he's going to be a great play.
All right, so now we go to the nay running backs of the week. Who do you got, Logue?
This one hurts me, but it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Oh, no.
He's missed practice. It was Thursday and Friday with a stomach illness, which is not super concerning for his game status. They expect him to be available, but I think for a guy who's already kind of having usage concerns, not getting the full bulk of the snaps, you could see that come down this week, especially in a matchup against Denver where last time the Chiefs played Denver, they pulled all their starters at basically the end of the third quarter. Like, it was a blowout. You could see that again, and if that happens, along with maybe a little bit less usage because he's been sick, it could be a pretty bad game for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, if he's banged up and they are up by a lot, because they're gonna like to throw anyway in that offense. So if they get up big, you might see a lot more Lev Bell than you might have Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
And like Lev Bell, when he first showed up, like I'm a Chiefs fan, so I've been paying pretty close attention. He didn't look good, but he's looked better the last couple weeks since the bye. He's looked more comfortable. He's looked more decisive on his runs, and I think it could be trouble for Clyde the rest of the year, especially if he's dealing with illness.
Yep. A guy for me, I've already mentioned, one of my yay running backs was Latavius Murray. Therefore, one of my nay running backs would have to be Alvin Kamara. I don't like Alvin Kamara right now as long as Taysom Hill is starting because we've mentioned this a ton. Taysom Hill doesn't throw the football. And that's basically where Kamara was living off those receptions as a running back, getting roughly about 8 to 13 targets a game. And now the last 2 games, I think he's only had a total of 3 targets at the running back position. That is not good, especially for a guy like Alvin Kamara that needs those targets, that lives off that, especially in a PPR format. So I don't like him this week, especially against Atlanta. You would think this is a smash spot for a guy like him, but I just don't like it.
Yeah, Atlanta's actually been a surprisingly good run defense too.
You're telling me.
So
I don't like it.
So it's not like, as much as a great great matchup for wide receivers and quarterbacks, it's not as good for the running backs. So along with the lower usage and basically no targets, I completely agree. You're obviously starting Alvin Kamara, but it's not looking great for him right now.
Yep, absolutely. Now, is there anybody else at the running back position that you don't like?
I mean, another guy I'm looking at is Gio Bernard. That offense, I mean, they looked embarrassing last week. He's been the starter, and with Joe Burrow in, I think he was a great play, but with Joe Burrow gone, it's getting a bit dicier, especially because Samaje Perine is getting some snaps there as well.
I think another guy for me, and I love to say this, it's Kenyan Drake. A big nay running back for me. I had him earlier this year in my fantasy team before I dealt him. And like I've said, they go against Aaron Donald and the Rams. And Kenyan Drake has had some games where he's looked pretty good, but he's had games where he's looked very average or bad at best. So you know what? I don't like him this week. And they have Chase Edmonds that they really rely on down the stretch sometimes. And if they're going to be, I think this game's going to be close. I think they're going to have to rely a lot more on Kyler Murray getting out of the pocket and running and basically throwing the football more. They're going to have to rely on Kenyan Drake. So I don't even think his usage is going to be to where it would normally be in good game scripts. So I'm not a big fan of him this week.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough matchup. He's a guy he's been a little bit touchdown reliant, and it could be tough sledding between the tackles this week.
Yep. All right, so we're going to move on to the wide receiver position, and I will start it off with our man, Allen Robinson. And with this, we would like to bring forth another message that Allen Robinson needs a quarterback. Please free Allen Robinson. Please, if you know a quarterback that needs a team and needs a good wide receiver, please send him Allen Robinson's way. He needs it. But with that being said, Allen Robinson's playing Detroit this week, who has a terrible defense, and Allen Robinson is the only real reliable option in Chicago right now. And with Mitch Trubisky playing quarterback, he targeted Allen Robinson a few more times in the red zone than he's actually been targeted than Nick Foles when he was at under center. So I really like Allen Robinson this week because, there's nobody else there. David Montgomery might do some work at the running back position, but Allen Robinson is pretty much going to get 10 to 15 targets every game as long as Mitch Trubisky is starting.
Okay, looking at it for me, I actually think Justin Jefferson this week is a great start. Like I've already said, I'm in on the Vikings passing attack. Adam Thielen will be back. He'll be great, but against the Jaguars, they can't stop anybody. So Jefferson's probably a guy you're more, maybe not on the fence about, but more like a lower tier player than Adam Thielen. And I think he's a guy, you fire him up, he's going to have a great week.
All right, so we'll move on to some nays this week. And I think a nay for me is DJ Chark. DJ Chark he hasn't really been great all year, but he's going to come back off an injury that kind of sidelined him last week. And with Mike Glennon starting under center, I just don't know how good Mike Glennon is throwing the football downfield to a guy like Chark that is mainly a big play guy. And against the Vikings, they actually have a pretty decent defense. So Jacksonville's going to rely a lot more on James Robinson to get their offense going and to do things for them. And DJ Chark is kind of going to be that guy that's probably going to get shadowed by at least their best corner. And he's going to be almost doubled mainly sometimes because there's nobody else on Jacksonville that can make big plays. So I don't really like DJ Chark against the Vikings, who really need a win this week.
Yeah, especially for a lot of people, it'll be a do or die week. I don't know how you could trust Chark with his third quarterback, quarterback of the season. I guess it's his third quarterback of the season. Third quarterback. And he's honestly been disappointed this season. We expected a step up from him. It hasn't happened. It's a scary start. He can always go off for a big play, but Mike Glennon, he seems more like a check down kind of guy than a jack it up downfield. So that's not going to fit DJ Chark's specialty as well.
And who do you got as a nay wide receiver of the week?
This one, I mean, you're still going to start him, but DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
We've talked about how bad the matchup is. Jalen Ramsey, I expect to shadow Nuke Hopkins, and he hasn't been as good the last 4 weeks. Like, looking at fantasy points, 4.5, then 22.2, 7.6, and 8. Looking at targets, you got 3, 12, 8, and 7. Yardage, 30, 127, 51, 55. So you've seen it. The usage is kind of more where we expected it to be coming into the year, where they spread the ball around. They've got quite a few weapons in that offense with Christian Kirk, Larry Fitzgerald, Andy Isabella. So there's a lot of guys there who can make plays. The running backs have become more involved. And then along with the Jalen Ramsey matchup, I don't know if the ceiling is there this week for Nuke Hopkins.
Yeah, that's going to be tough, and especially with Jalen Ramsey and D-Hop have a history of playing in the same division in the AFC. Yeah. They've played each other twice a year for every year they've pretty much been in the league together. So they pretty much don't like each other
Yeah.
at this point. So it's going to be a rough day for D-Hop. He's one of the best receivers in the league, but Jalen Ramsey's the best corner in the league. So it's going to be a real tough day.
It's going to be a fun matchup to watch,
Oh,
though.
it's
Like,
gonna
those
be
two
fun.
going at it are two of the best in the league, and they're both, honestly, maulers. Like, they're physical players. They like going at a guy, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, but it's not like Nuke Hopkins is going to come down with, like, 150 yards and 3 touchdowns or something like that. Like, I think his best case scenario is, like, 100 yards, maybe catches a touchdown, but I'd expect less.
Yep. Do you got anybody else that you don't really like?
That'd be my main guy for this week.
So another guy for me is Brandon Cooks. And we've mentioned this situation a whole lot with Will Fuller being out. And I'm not really liking Deshawn Watson this week going up against Indy. Brandon Cooks is not really... If you have to start him, I feel sorry for you. Because I hope you have another option to pivot to. But I think if you can, don't play Brandon Cooks. Because he has the big playability. But with that defense being, I think, really motivated this week in Indianapolis, I don't like Brandon Cooks being the number one option down there. It's going to make it for a rough day. And they're going to be down a lot. So he's going to have opportunities. But it's not something I'd be overly excited about.
Yeah, we've mentioned this. It's probably going to be tough sledding for that offense this week. And if you're going to start a guy, it's Brandon Cooks. I don't know who else you'd really want to start out of that receiving group. Like, I was desperate for a wide receiver start this week. I was looking at Kiki QT, like maybe even pick up Jordan Akins as a flex or a tight end start, and it's just like I have no faith that Indy isn't gonna be like really shutting that offense down hard this
absolutely.
week. So it's hard to trust many guys with Will Fuller out now.
All right. And we will wrap up in yays and nays with tight ends. All right, Logue, you got a yay tight end of the week?
I think I've already talked about the Colts this week, but I think Trey Burton. I think that's the guy you got to go with. It's a great matchup against Houston. They love using their tight ends, especially kind of in that like not quite run game, but that short passing to work as a running kind of play.
Mm-hmm.
I think Trey Burton, he's proven he's a great athlete. He can kind of work. They've used him as a wildcat quarterback even in the red zone. So
yeah,
I like his ability, and I think this week with a great matchup, you could see him have a good week.
Absolutely. And the guy for me, he's a pretty much easy start tight end, but it's Darren Waller. Darren Waller against the Jets. I think the Raiders should kill the Jets. They should anyway.
Yeah.
The Raiders are a very iffy team because they got destroyed by my Falcons, which made me very upset. But you know what? Darren Waller, lock-in tight end, no question about it. I think anybody playing the Jets, you lock him, you start him, no problem. All right, tight ends you don't like, the nays.
For me this week, this is assuming he's healthy, Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
I don't think he looked very impressive when he was healthy this year. Carson Wentz has been a mess, and Green Bay actually has a good defense, especially against the pass. So he's a guy I would much rather be starting Dallas Goedert. I don't know if I would really, even if I had the option, I don't know if I'd want to start Zach Ertz this week.
Mm-hmm. And a guy for me, he's really kind of like teetering for me. And I really don't like putting him here because I actually really like the guy. And as a Falcon fan, it kind of hurts. But Haydenhurst. I heard a story this week. Haydenhurst kind of like went over his story about depression and suicide and everything like that. It was actually really moving. I heard about it. It's pretty cool. I now have to get myself a Haydenhurst jersey because I totally respect the heck out of that guy. But for fantasy purposes, I don't like him this week against New Orleans. New Orleans crushed Atlanta defensively last time they played, and Haydenhurst, I don't even got a catch last time against New Orleans. So, again, playing them again is going to be rough. And especially if we don't have Julio Jones and Todd Gurley, he might get a bump up because he's going to be one of our only offensive players left healthy, but I still don't really feel overly confident. I'm still going to start him, but I think his upside is kind of capped really this week.
Yeah, I would say especially if Julio Jones, we've discussed this before, when Julio is not in, that offense as a whole takes a huge step back.
Mm-hmm.
And with Haydenhurst, like maybe you get a big play up the middle of the field, but chances are you're hoping for that touchdown. And with no Julio against a great Saints defense, it's going to be tough to come by.
Yep. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for Yays and Nays for Week 13. So now we will do a quick game-by-game week preview of guys that we like or may not like for each particular game. So we're going to start off with the 1 o'clock games, and we're going to start off with the Falcons and Saints. Logan, who do you like?
This might seem obvious, but Michael Thomas, like we've discussed, it's a little bit dicey with Taysom Hill, but And the Atlanta pass defense sucks, and Michael Thomas was good against them last time they played. So I think he's a guy I'd be starting with a bit of confidence this week.
Might seem pretty obvious, but Calvin Ridley, because if Julio doesn't go, obviously we've mentioned that offense is a little bit dicey when it comes to it, but Calvin Ridley's been really awesome all year, and even when Julio doesn't play, he's still getting roughly about double-digit points, so I think Calvin Ridley's a guy that you still will love to start, no problem for me. Next game, Lions and Bears.
I mean, again, this might seem obvious, but David Montgomery. It's a great matchup. He looked really good last week, which you can't say about him very often. So I think he's a guy I'd be really happy to start up this week.
Absolutely, and especially them going against the Lions defense that really is very bad against the run all season. David Montgomery could have a very big game. And if that helps that almost helps the rest of that Chicago offense get going. It opens up stuff for Allen Robinson and the rest of those wide receiver group. All right, and this might seem obvious too. We're going to keep going with the obvious picks here, but TJ Hawkinson for the Detroit Lions. He's one of the best tight ends in football, and him going against Chicago, it's a rough defense, but he's going to be one of their only offensive players that are going to be healthy and probably effective. And as a tight end spot, that is something that you love to start. So give me more TJ Hawkinson. All right, Colts Texans.
And this is a bit of a deeper play, but I actually like Michael Pittman Jr. this week. So, I mean, we've already discussed it. Great matchup. I think he's a really talented player. He's a guy I'd be willing to take a flyer on this week.
And you know what? I'd be willing to take a flyer on Jordan Akins myself at the tight end position, depending on how it looks for you in maybe deeper leagues or anything like that. If you're looking for maybe a flex play that might get some red zone looks, I think Jordan Akins is just the kind of guy that might be able to get it done for you. All right, Raiders Jets.
I mean, we discussed this. I would be firing up basically every Raider. If you're looking for a kind of deeper play, Nelson Aguilar this week, good deep ball threat. Like he's always a threat to score a long touchdown. He could, if you're looking for a high upside week, I'd be interested in looking at him.
Yep. And for myself, another deep play guy for the New York Jets, actually, Rashad Perryman. I like Rashad Perryman. He's even Jamison Crowder. I like both of them because they're going to be down, I think, all game. They're going to have to throw the football. And with Sam Darnold back there, I think you might see Rashad Perryman catch another 75-yard touchdown, something along those lines. So that's something to look out for. So if you can see him on your waiver wire and your wide receiver position is looking pretty rough, Rashad Perryman's a good look. All right, Browns Titans.
I mean, looking at Cleveland, you're going to start Nick Chubb, but I'd also be pretty happy to start Kareem Hunt this week. Like his last 2 weeks haven't been as good, but great matchup against Tennessee. We've already mentioned it. Baker's been terrible this year, so I bet they're looking to run the ball more. And Kareem Hunt, he's a really talented guy. I think he could easily score a touchdown this week, and then you're going to be happy with him.
For me, you know what? It's Austin Hooper. I think Austin Hooper, you know what? I think, like I've mentioned, I think the Browns are going to be down, and Austin Hooper as a tight end is still a very good tight end, but especially if they're going to be down all game, Jarvis Landry's going to probably have a pretty rough game being the number one wide receiver down there. So Austin Hooper might be the check down guy and the red zone guy if they get down there and unless they run it. So Austin Hooper is a pretty good start for me this week. Bengals, Dolphins.
I mean, this is a game outside of Myles Gaskin. I'd be avoiding everyone I can, especially if Tua starts, because if Tua's in, Devontae Parker takes a bump down. That's not saying Tua's not a good quarterback. It's just Fitz loves hyper-targeting Devontae Parker. And then with no Joe Burrow, we've already discussed Gio Bernard. It's not looking great this week.
Yep. And like I totally agree with you. I don't really have confidence in anybody else on the offensive side of the ball, so I'm going to go with the defensive side of the ball, and I'm going to go with the Miami Dolphins defense.
Yes.
Cincinnati doesn't have a quarterback that's going to do anything effective, so the Dolphins defense has been really good all year. They've scored touchdowns on multiple games, so I could see that happening possibly again. Fire up that Dolphins defense. Jags and Vikings.
I mean, this is a guy, I already discussed it, but Justin Jefferson, I'm excited for this week. I think he's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to see what he can do against this Jacksonville defense.
I think Adam Thielen might take a little bit out of that because now he's been back, and I think they definitely missed having him last week. Yeah. He's definitely their guy that they use in the red zone and whatnot, but Justin Jefferson's a really good play. Agree with that. But Jacksonville, the only guy you can really start in confidence is James Robinson. Yeah. He's been dominant all year, and I expect it to keep going because he's just felt like he's matchup proof at this point. He's gotten almost double-digit points in almost every game he's played. So, you know what? Give me more James Robinson, and I get to start him, and I'm happy about it. All right, Rams, Cardinals.
I think Christian Kirk is actually in play this week. Like we discussed, we're a little bit worried about that Cardinals offense, but they're going to move the ball. Like, they're actually a really good offense. And I think if Nuke Hopkins is going to have a quiet week, Christian Kirk could very well benefit from that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the Rams, they've got a great cornerback room, but that's obviously pretty heavily weighted on Jalen Ramsey being the best in the league. And I think Kirk, he's a good wide receiver, so I would be interested in looking at him this week.
Yep. For me, it's all the Rams wide receivers. I like that wide receiver group with Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and Josh Reynolds. I really like them. And against the Cardinals aren't really a defense that scares you. And after the Rams lost a heartbreaker to San Francisco last week, they need this game. It's a very important divisional matchup with big playoff implications. So I think they're going to throw the football a lot more, especially with their running back situation looking pretty iffy at this moment. So I think you can fire all of them up and feel pretty confident.
Yeah, I agree. I picked up Josh Reynolds to start this week. As I said earlier, I'm desperate for a wide receiver start, and I actually think Reynolds could have a solid week.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Seahawks, Giants.
I mean, I like Wayne Gallman. I've brought him up probably more times than I should have on this show, but he's been really good, and I don't think very many people realize how good he's been. And the Seahawks, their defense has improved. I actually think their defense isn't one you can pick on anymore. Their last 3 weeks, they've looked good, but I think Wayne Gallman, he's shown just no matter what the defense is, he's been effective. So I think he's a guy you can start with confidence.
All right. And for me, it might seem a little bit obvious, but we've been knowing that with the preview. So give me more Chris Carson.
Yep.
Because with Carlos Hyde looking a little banged up, looking like he might play, but even if he is, he's going to be a little bit more banged up than he was last week when he took more snaps and more touches away from Carson. And after another week of practice and Carson looking more healthy, he might get that workhorse backload that you've been expecting when you drafted him at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
All right, Eagles, Packers.
I mean, I'd be starting Dallas Goedert, and probably that's it out of those Eagles pass catchers.
Same.
He's the only one who's proven himself reliable, and he's looked good in a position that there's not very many good players. So
absolutely,
I'd be excited to start Goddard and happy to sit everybody else.
Yeah, and you know what? Goddard's been that guy that's been pretty much the only reliable pass catcher for that offense with Carson Wentz looking really bad. So, you know what? Totally agree with that. And even another guy on the Packers side, Robert Tanyan. Yep. He's been a pretty effective tight end, and I think against the Eagles secondary that's been very good at best. It's, you know what? Robert Tanyan's that tight end that's just emerged as that guy. Like, Aaron Rodgers loves his tight ends, loves throwing to him, and Tanyan's had very big games, especially with Devontae Adams going to taking a ton of defenders away from him. He might catch a big touchdown because he's been open for a lot of those plays all season. So
yeah, especially in the red zone, he's looked great. So I agree. He's a good start this week.
Also fire up that Packer defense because whenever Carson Wentz plays, you fire up the defense he's playing against.
Yep.
All right, Chargers, Pats.
I mean, I think Mike Williams this week is a really good start. I mean, Stephon Gilmore, he's the only guy that you could really, or one of the only guys you could really put in that Jalen Ramsey tier of cornerback. And I'd expect him to be on Keenan Allen quite a bit, which opens up the field for Mike Williams going deep.
Yeah, and you know what, for me, it might seem obvious, but Austin Eckler. Yeah. Austin Eckler's going to be the check down guy for Justin Herbert. He loves using his running backs in that kind of play. And Eckler I don't think he had a huge game last week. So him against the Pats in the dome at home, it might be a little bit different. The Pats haven't looked great all year. And like we've mentioned, the Chargers are really good on the offensive side of the ball when it comes to passing. So they're going to really guard that more than the run game. So I think Austin Eckler could have a really big breakout game again.
Yeah, he's a smash start this week.
All right, Broncos, Chiefs.
I mean, fire up your Chiefs pass catchers. I've already said I'm a little bit worried about the running attack this week for fantasy. So with how much the Chiefs are passing, Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, I think even if you're looking for a dart throw, Mecole Hardman, I think all of them are in the startable range this week.
Coming from a Chiefs fan. No, I'm just kidding. Because I'm with Logan. You know what? I don't really feel overly confident in any Bronco really this week, especially against the Chiefs. So fire up every Chief. And I'm talking about defense, talking about all the pass catchers. Sit Patrick Mahomes. No, I'm just kidding. You start Patrick Mahomes, of course. You fire up every Chief and the defense. You feel good about it. They're going to probably kill the Broncos again. No problem. Going to be a pretty good way to end your Sunday night. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep, I'm excited.
All right, Washington versus Pittsburgh.
I like Eric Ebron this week. We discussed tight ends quite a bit because it is kind of a crapshoot of a position, but he's been good. They throw the ball a lot, and that's the one spot Washington's been below average at in terms of fantasy points against. So I think that's a position to target against them, and Eric Ebron is a solid player, so I'd be excited with that.
Yeah, and for me, give me Terry McLaurin and give me Antonio Gibson.
Yep.
They are pretty much the only bright spots for this Washington football team. And you know what? They're the only offense they got with Alex Smith. So you know what? And especially with Bud Dupree going down for the Steelers, that kind of weakens their defensive line a bit. So it might make things a little easier for Antonio Gibson to get through. Still not like a guaranteed hit, but makes things a little bit better, especially if you're going to start him. If you have any other options, definitely play Antonio Gibson. I think he's going to have a really big game.
Yeah.
All right, Buffalo 49ers.
I mean, this is a guy I brought up on the waiver wire show, but Gabriel Davis, if you're looking for a dart throw, he's a good wide receiver. He's a rookie, big play guy. He's going to be who's replacing John Brown as kind of the outside wide receiver if they got 3 wide receivers out there. So he's a guy who could still be on your waiver wire and could be a solid play this week.
Yep. For me, Raheem Mostert. Mostert is going to, I think he came back last week, did he?
Yeah.
Yep, so this is the second week he's been back. I think he's going to have a lot better game than he did before. That 49er team actually still has something to play for, surprisingly. So you know what? If they get ahead, they love to run the football. That's what Shanahan loves to do. And with Mostert back, he could honestly have one of those explosive games that he's had before he got injured in the first place. Give me him, no problem. I really like him this week against the Bills, who don't really have a shutdown defense really this year. So
no, it's been looking a little bit better, but especially on the ground, it's been beatable this year.
Absolutely. And we're going to wrap it up with the Cowboys and Ravens.
I mean, this is the guy I'm starting this week, J.K. Dobbins. I think, again, it's kind of the same argument made for Jonathan Taylor. He's been the most effective guy in that backfield this year. 2 weeks ago, he looked great. He was the lead back. And then on the COVID list last week, Gus Edwards, I think, had 9 rushes for 10 yards with him out of the lineup. He didn't claim any sort of role. Mark Ingram has looked basically washed this year. So I think J.K. Dobbins in a great matchup against Dallas could have a big week.
And for me, the only guy I really trust on the Cowboys side of the ball is probably Amari Cooper.
Yep.
He's going to be the guy that's going to give you those big plays, maybe a touchdown. And against the Ravens, I think they're going to be down. That's if Lamar gets healthy in time for that game, which I believe he should.
Yeah, I think he's expected to be activated on Sunday.
Yep.
Assuming everything goes good, which considering it's Saturday afternoon, I would be surprised if he wasn't.
Absolutely. So that's the only guy I really feel confident in. All right, so that will wrap it up for episode 11 of the Ryan and Locke Fantasy Show. As always, thank you for listening. We really appreciate you. And if you wouldn't mind to hit the like and subscribe button and also the notification bell, that way you don't miss any of our new videos. And feel free to comment in the comment section of maybe how is your team looking right now for the fantasy season? Are you going to make the playoffs? Are you going to miss? What do you need to make it? Let us know. We'd like to hear about it. So again, thanks for listening, like and subscribe, and as always, stay classy.